Hi, welcome back to my channel, Midnight Reading with Jamie. And today we are going to continue reading this novel by Sidney Sheldon, The Phoenix, and we are going to continue from chapter 3. First, I will put on my 45 minutes timer and then we will start. I started this channel actually to for my own beneficial that I wanted to uh, you know, develop my communication skills, and I wanted to be more confident while I speak, and I don't want to repeat certain words while conversing. Like, I don't want to use like multiple times in a sentence as my filler statements. And also, I wanted to, be confident. This is like my speech therapy. Also, just for this video, I always take a bath, I comb my hair. It's been a depressing day, so yeah, this is the purpose behind the reading. Also, there's another hidden reason that I love buying books. I have been buying a lot of books, and I have ton of them. During my when I was in class 10th, ninth, I used to read a lot, and suddenly something happened. I think life happened that I altogether stopped reading. Still, I buy books, like I buy a lot of books, but I don't read them. Um, so with this YouTube channel, I'm hoping that I will get back to my reading habit, daily reading habit. I have been reading. I have started reading yesterday, like the before video. I said that I have pre-read this novel so that I would be able to uh, perform the expressions that are given by the writer in more well-versed manner. So today I got an opportunity to rewatch my all videos, and I thought that my voice is very suppressed, and also that every time I'm reading my books like this, whatever the my voice is capable of delivering, the pitch, it becomes even more low, and it's sort of boring to see a person read like this. Like this, you are not able to like interact with me. I'm not having a direct interaction with my own face, and I'm not able to see what sort of you know antics my face is doing, what sort of nerve it is pulling at certain expression. So it's not helping me in that way. So I have decided that today I will read this novel like this. I will like put it here, like away from my camera, and we will go through it. Okay, I got this paper clip, and I think it will help me. I will buy a setup later, and then I hope things will be much better than what I'm already delivering. I also need an AC. I never switch on the fan and it becomes quite hot, but I don't want that fan voice to interrupt in my already not so pitch perfect YouTube channel. So, yeah, that thing also. Gary Larson crossed. Okay, we did not set the. I'm going to start with my reading for tonight, and I have to set my this novel also. So, uh, yeah, we're fine. We're fine like this. I have to buy a book band. Okay, that is also in a to-do list. I will make a to-do list and publish it. That what all the things I bought for this video making. Oh, okay, I'm starting with my timer and we go. Chapter 3. Gary Larson crossed his fat thighs and leaned back in his chair, a pained expression on his face. I'm sorry, Ella, but I'm going to have to let you go. Gary had landed job of CEO at Biogen Medical Research 2 years ago by default when his friend Marty Gruber, the original CEO and founder, died in a freak snowboard accident in Taoi. Everybody had loved Marty, the archetypal go-getting millennial entrepreneur with a passion for risk and pushing boundaries. Nobody loved Gary, his lecherous, talentless best friend and business partner who had ridden Marty's coattails to success. Ringo style ever since high school. But fortune, it seems, it didn't always favor the bold. Sometimes it favored the fat, entitled and cowardly, leaving the bold to suffocate under 600 tons of unexpectedly unstable snow. Yeah, that will happen throughout the video. I will find a solution day after tomorrow. These unexplained absences of yours have become a habit, and one BMR can't afford. Gary told Ella pompously. It was over a week since Mimi's funeral, but this was the first day Ella felt well enough to return to work at her boring number crunching job in the statistic division. Okay, she said calmly, waiting up to go. Gary Larson frowned. Wait, he called after her. It was infuriating the way that Ella Preagers seemed immune to his authority. Even now, when he was firing her ass, the bitch wouldn't do him the courtesy of showing any emotion. He secretly hoped for tears, perhaps even more pleading. He imagined Ella on knees, her strangely beautiful face turned up to his desperation. Please, Mr. Larson, I need this job. I will do anything. But instead, she was walking away, out of his life, with no more concern than someone who just been told about a minor change to their bus timetable. Please take a seat. He gestured mag- mag- magnanimously to the chair Ella had just vacated. This isn't personal. You know, I have always liked you. I know, said Ella, still standing. Gary softened. Perhaps he was being too hasty letting Ella Preger go. She was an oddball, certainly, and not popular with her colleagues. But she was brilliant statistician and a hard worker when she deigned to show up. And then of course there was that body. You wanted to sleep with me from the day I joined. I beg your pardon? Gary flushed. My first day here, you put your hands on my buttocks in the elevator, said Ella, mimicking the action with her hands. I have no memory of that, Gary spluttered. I do, Ella said calmly. Also, when I ate in the canteen, you used to sit next to me and touch my legs with yours. Ella, I assure you, you also made repeated positive observation about my appearance. Ella went on, which is another well known indicator of sexual attraction. The CEO face went from pink to red to puce. Now listen, Ella, there's no need for this to get ugly. Ella looked perplexed. Why would it get ugly? You're throwing around some pretty wild accusation there. I'm sorry if you interpreted some of my friendly overtures towards you as your boss. No need to apologize, said Ella, her tone still maddeningly neutral. I didn't misinterpret them. I just ignored them because I didn't find you attractive. Goodbye. Gary opened his mouth to say something, then closed it again, like a dying fish on a line. Was she threatening him or insulting him? Or was it just Ella Prager being her usual baffling awkward self? She walked out of his office, and this time Gary Larson let her go. As soon as she left, he loosened his tie, which felt horribly tight all of a sudden, and picked up the phone to HR. Make sure Ella Prager gets a generous severance package, he barked. And when she takes it, have her sign a rider to waive any future claims against the company. Of course, sir. And when you say generous, give her whatever she wants. Gary blurted, just get rid of her. Noriko Adachi sipped her iced water as she listened intently to the man sitting across the table from her. His call last night had been unexpected but welcome. Professor Adachi still had no idea how this total stranger knew she was in New York. Never mind the hotels where she was staying, her room number, and precise details of her itinerary. Sorry, I dropped my tea a little bit. Yeah, it's fine. The seminar on early 19th century feminist literature at NYU was hardly a well published event, especially for those outside the academic world. And yet, this polished, erudite American businessman, Mark Redmayne, a billionaire, according to Google, seemed to know all there was to know about her. In other circumstances, Noriko would have shut him down immediately. She didn't appreciate being stalked, but as soon as she read the word petridis, he had her undivided attention. My condolences for your loss, Professor. Let mine begin. The moment Noriko sat down at their corner table at the Finch in the Brooklyn. From what we hear, your son Akiko was a fine young man. Thank you. He was. It was odd the way he used we instead of I. He had done the same thing last night on the phone. Noriko wondered who else he was speaking for. 15 years ago, wasn't it? That's right. Despite herself, she felt tears welling in her eyes. It was so long since anyone had talked to her about Kiko. Hearing his name brought it all back. But it feels like yesterday. I don't know why I'm itching today so much. Maybe because of untied hair. Yes. Noriko cleared her throat. It had been hard to lay him to rest, knowing his killers were never brought to justice. Worse than that, they were praised, adored by the world. A muscle began to twitch in her jaw. She twisted her napkin violently between her fingers, as if it were a chicken she were trying to wring its neck. I understand. Believe me, said Renmine. My group, the organization I run, have been on the petri dishes for years. Decades. Oh, we tried to get the authorities to investigate. Governments, international agencies, local police forces, but no one took us seriously. In the end, we were forced to take matters in our own hands. Noriko listened and enthralled. What do you mean take matters into your own hands? She paused for a moment, her clever mind racing to catch up as she answered her own question. The helicopter crash? She lowered her voice to a whisper. That was you? Redmine nodded. That was us. As their food arrived, he described his group to Noriko, albeit in very vague, shadowy terms. From what she could tell, they appeared to be some sort of secret vigilante society, a slick, well funded one, if Redmine's credentials were anything to go by, targeting criminals that the police or politician either couldn't or wouldn't bring to justice. Perhaps she should have listened in more detail, but her brain was still stuck on prejudices. At long last, she had met someone who not only believed her about Kiko and the destruction that Spyros and Athena had wrought, but who actually done something about it. It was intoxicating. I read your article, the one Newsweek wouldn't run, Redmine told her. You were right about so much. I can feel your pain vibrating off the page. Yes, those were dark times, admitted Noriko, too caught up in the moment to ask how he would found read an article that had never been published. After the crash, things were better for a while. I started to let go, but then this, right? Mark Redmine slid a high resolution copy of picture of the drowned migrant boy across the table. The L on his foot was clearly visible. Noriko bit her lips and pinched the bridge of her nose, determined not to cry again. Yes, I can't imagine how painful it must have been for you to see that, said Redmine. Noriko looked away at the busy street outside the window. She's alive, she whispered. It would seem that way, Redmine concurred. How? How could have she survived that crash? We don't know, he answered truthfully. There's a lot we don't know at this point, but we intend to find out. And if Athena Petridis is alive, we will bring her to justice. You have my word on it. Noriko looked up sharply. Are you looking for justice or vengeance? Is there a difference? Redmine cocked his head to one side. We can call it vengeance, I suppose. Righteous vengeance. For a while, both of them fell silent. After a full minute, Redmine began to wonder whether he'd done enough. But then Professor Noriko Adachi turned to him and uttered the words he had been waiting to hear. I want to help Mr. Redmine. Please tell me more about your group. Back in San Francisco, Ella's anxiety was building. In reality, she felt a lot less sanguine about losing her job at Biogen than she let on her now ex boss. Walking home to her tiny apartment on Fillmore Street after their interview, she struggled to contain a rising sense of panic. What now? After weeks spending in and out of doctors' offices by day and getting second, third, and fourth opinions after her collapse at the cabin, all depressingly the same, there's nothing physically wrong with you, Mrs. Prager. There may be a psychological trigger. And in her apartment by night, reading and rereading all her father's letters to her grandmother and herself, Ella was emotionally and physically exhausted. True, a medical research job was boring, and Gary's clumsy come-ons on daily irritant. And true, the money wasn't great. But Ella's job had provided routine and stability, something tangible to hold on to. She needed that now more than ever. The events of the last 3 weeks had thrown her for a total loop. Mimi's death, going back to the ranch for the funeral, finding the letters, and all the top of the intolerable situation with her headaches. Bob from the coffee shop had helped her to try to make sense of the letter at least. I wouldn't jump to conclusions, he advised her. You don't know what your grandmother's motives might have been for keeping the truth from you. There are a lot of missing pieces here. Ella looked at him with anguish. It's not just Mimi. If my parents were alive, why didn't they come back for me? Bob hugged her. For someone so abrasive and downright rude at some times, Ella could be deeply sensitive, almost like a child. I don't know, sweetheart. How could they leave me there forever? And why did they stop writing? The last letter was sent the year I turned 8. Do you think they stopped because I never replied? Do you think they thought I didn't love them? No, Bob said fiercely. I'm sure they didn't think that. Look at your dad's letter to your grandmother. He knew she was the one keeping their letters from you. He knew that she lied to you about the car crash. And why was he the only one who wrote? Ella asked angrily. What about my mother? Where was she all those years? Where is she now? Look, said Bob, these are all good questions. But the only way you're going to know anything is by finding out the truth for yourself. It seems to me the first thing you need to know is whether they are still alive. Bob had been so kind as usual and so practical. Ella wished she had his facilities for breaking problems down into manageable parts. He was right. She did have to take charge and discover the truth for herself somehow. But something held her back. In her more honest moments, she realized that something was fear. Tapping the code into panel outside her building, Ella slipped inside, climbed the creaky 3 flights of stairs to her attic apartment. Once inside, she removed her shoes, placed them exactly symmetrically against the wall, as was her ritual. In front of her, the living room cum kitchen was just as she had left it a few hours ago, neat, ordered, and Spartan. The white formica table gleamed like something out of pathologist's lab, an impression only enhanced by the persuasive smell of bleach countertop cleaner. A single bright red armchair faced the television, also dusted to within an inch of its life, with only other furniture in the room a functional IKEA bookcase on which variety of novels and self-help books were stacked in strict color-coded order. It's 11 o'clock on the Monday morning, Ella thought, shifting her weight awkwardly from foot to foot as her panic returned from a vengeance. What do I do now? Growing up on the ranch, there was always a job to be done and a time for everything. In city, it was different. There were no guns to clean, or rabbits to skin, or fences to mend. To fill the days, one needed a job, a made up purpose. Up until today, Ella had one. But now, terrifying prospect loomed of free time, of long, structureless hours in which voices in her head would be free to run rampant. Sorry. They were already playing now, on low volume. A male voice had started reciting string of numbers the moment Ella walked into the building. Maybe the doctors were right. Maybe it's just stress related. Moving aimlessly through her bedroom, Ella sat at her desk, flipped open her computer, resisting the urge to open the drawer containing her father's letter. Last night, she spent more than 3 hours obsessively studying the postmark on all envelopes Mimi had saved. The letters had come from all over the globe: Pakistan, Greece, South Africa, Fiji. My parents explored the world together. Knowing I was stuck in that cabin, completely isolated, grieving a death that never happened. In the beginning, Ella had taken her father's side, blaming her grandmother entirely for the cruel lie she had been weaned on. But as the days passed, she couldn't avoid the harsh truth that her parent had also been complicit. They knew where I was, and they never came back. What Ella had to do now, urgently, was to find another job. She couldn't allow letters to consume her, not until her own life had stabilized. Scrolling through the position listed on monster.com and the Berkeley alumni website, her heart sank. Even for desk bound research or coding jobs, employers wanted outgoing, charismatic staff with proven people skills. Ella's academic credentials were stellar, and she was always invited to interview. But that's where things inevitably went wrong. Tell us why you want to work for Humperfloop Industry, the bright-eyed HR team would ask her. To earn money, Ella would reply truthfully. This usually prompted laughter, but then that would be followed by other trickier question. What are your passions? A middle-aged female Interviewer at tech startup once asked Ella, apart from coding. Apart from coding? Yes. Woman smiled. We are looking for well rounded individuals, people with more than one string on their bow. Ella palm began sweating. All the responses she practiced were about coding. What sort of passion did the woman mean? Bob had warned Ella ferociously never ever to mention sex in these encounters. But what did that leave her with? I like coffee cake, she said at last. Woman looked blank. Coffee cake? I can shoot a deer from 300 yards, Ella blurted. Interviewer's horrified face told Ella at once that she made a mistake. Yet some death wish prompted her to follow up with, I can get a fish. Very interesting. Well, thank you, Miss Prager. Please see yourself out. Landing the Biogen job a year ago had nothing sort of a miracle. Ella was pretty sure she only got that because Carrie Larson fancied her. But now she lost it thanks in parts to her stupid headaches, which weren't getting any better and would probably ruin her chances at next job if she ever got one. Don't be negative, she told herself. Healthy people turn their lemons into lemonade. This time she would do better. She would follow Bob's example, break the problem down into small steps. Step 1, get up better at interviews. Standing up, she positioned herself stiffly in front of mirror. Many people had told her that tone of voice was important as well as the body language and eye contact. A pleasure to meet you. Ella grinned at her reflection, offering her right hand. I'm Ella Preager. No, too gushing. How do you do? She tried again. I am Ella. This time her smile looked like a rigor mortis grimace. Thank you for seeing me, she told the mirror, relaxing her jaw, tossing back her hair in what she hoped was a relaxed, natural manner. I am Ella. The pleasure's all mine, Ella. Ella spun around and screamed. Standing behind her, leaning nonchalantly against her bedroom door as if he had a perfect right to be there, grinning like a Cheshire cat, was a man from her grandmother's funeral. Chapter 4. We have reached chapter 4. Get out! Picking up her hairbrush from her perfectly arranged dressing table, Ella hurled it at the man's handsome head. He was even more attractive than she remembered him from the ranch, but this time was no time to get distracted. The throw was accurate and lightning fast, hitting him painfully on the side of the skull. What did you do that for? The man scowled at her. You broke into my apartment, Ella retorted, reaching for a heavy looking glass perfume bottle. Don't, the man begged, covering his head protectively with his arm. I didn't break in your apartment. The door was open. N- Ella's eyes narrowed. I always close the door behind me. Not this time, shrugged the man. Who are you? Ella demanded, still clutching the scent bottle. That's not important, said the man, his earlier confidence returning even as he rubbed the glowing lump on his skull, already a size of walnut. It's important to me. Why are you here? Said Ella. And why are you at my grandmother's service? Put down that bottle and I will tell you. The man smiled, and for the first time, Ella allowed herself to take a really good look at his face. She already clocked him as attractive, but she saw now that his defining feature was his jaw, strong and perhaps a little too wide. It gave him a rough, rugged look at odds with his otherwise sophisticated manner and dress. He had a brown eyes surrounded by fangs of deep line that marked him as older than Ella had thought at the funeral service. 40, at a guess, but in good shape for his age, and with no hints of grey at the edges of his thick, dark hair. He was wearing a suit again today, well cut and expensive, with gold cufflinks that glinted when he raised his arms to shield himself from Ella's impending blows. While Ella looked at him, he returned to the compliment, his gaze trailing languidly up and down Ella's body in most disconcerting manner. The look in his eyes was part curious, part predatory. Ella felt an instinctive rush of blood to her groin. She gripped the perfume bottle tighter. Tell me right now who you are and why you are following me, or I will call the police and have you arrested for trespassing. No, you won't. The man turned and walked into Ella's living room, sitting down at the table, stretching out his leg with maddening lack of concern. If he had a cigarette, he would have lit it. I might, Ella protested weakly, unsure how she somehow lost the upper hand in their interaction or for harassment. No one's harassing you, Ella. It was the first time he used her name. Sit down. He gestured to the chair opposite him as if it were his apartment, not hers. Ella contemplated refusing, but then decided it would look weak and churlish. Besides, now the shock at being ambushed had passed, she felt more intrigued than threatened. Putting down the bottle, she joined him at the table. Good. He smiled again, flashing his white teeth like a wolf. Now I believe you had some questions for me. Why were you at Mimi's funeral? Ella began. To see you. But you didn't see me. You didn't introduce yourself. You left before I could speak to you. I saw what I needed to see. Ella scowled. She never been a fan of riddles. What does that mean? What do you want from me? Her expiration was starting to show. You show up at my grandmother's funeral uninvited, then you walk into my home unannounced and actually at a really bad time. I lost my job this morning. The man shrugged, showing zero interest in this information, never mind sympathy. Christ, he's rude, thought Ella. Of all the obnoxious, self centered, you would have had to leave your job anyway, he said matter of factly. You're going to be working for us from now on, Ella. Ella raised her eyebrows. Oh, I am I? And who exactly is us? The man leaned forward, suddenly animated. The organization I represent is a secret but powerful group. We work as a force for justice around the globe. Era stifled the urge to laugh. What was this? A comic book? Next, he would be telling her that they all wore capes and lived in a bad caves. But when he spoke again, he sounded deadly serious. There are things I can explain to you today. Other things will become clear over time once you start your training. Training? For the first time, it occurred to Ella that perhaps this good looking stranger was actually unhinged. Some sort of paranoid schizophrenic who had seen her on the street or in the coffee shop and decided to stalk her. First to Mimi's funeral and now here at her home. Perhaps she ought to be concerned for her safety. Listen, I'm sorry, she said, getting up and walking calmly to the front door of the apartment. I'm sure you mean well, but I think you must have me confused with someone else. I'm not going to be doing any training or joining any group. I have an ordinary life. I work in an office. I thought you said you were fired. Wow, Ella thought, frowning. He has even more worse social skills than I do. Well, yes, I was fired. But that's not important. The point is, I need you to leave right now. She held open the door. Man did not move. Please go. Nothing. I'm serious. Ella tone hardened. If you don't leave, I will. Your parents. William and Rachel Prager were both important members of the group. the man said, without looking up from the table. They devoted their lives to the cause. Ella froze. You knew my parents? Not personally, the man said. I knew of them, naturally. They were the legendary in their time. Everyone in the group knows about the Preagers. Ella closed the door. Her heart was beating so fast that it was hard to breathe. She looked at the man. You used the past tense. They were legendary. Yes. So my parents are dead? Yes. There was no soft soaping. No, I am so sorry, or I thought you knew. He answered her as blandly as she would ask him the time or some trivia question. Tactless. Like me, Ella thought again. Not that their familiarity eased the blow. Leaning against the wall, she fought to steady her breathing. All her life, up till 10 days ago, she believed her parents were dead, killed in a car crash when she was very young. But since finding the stack of letters hidden in the Mimi's ceiling, she had been living on hope. Angry hope. Confused hope. But hope, nothing the less. That perhaps miraculously it wasn't too late. That one day she would see her father and mother again and they would explain everything, make everything all right. But now, with a single word, this stranger, this bizarre, arrogant, handsome man with extinguish that hope like a priest at the end of the mass, casually snuffing out a candle. Are you sure they were dead? Ella whispered. Quite sure, said the man. They died on a mission for us in 2001. 2001. That was the year the letters had stopped. You believe you were 8 years at the time, the man said. What sort of mission? Said Ella. It didn't occur to her to wonder how he knew her age or indeed anything about her. Are you trying to tell me that my parents were spies? He shrugged. We prefer the term agents. How did they die? Demanded Ella, who didn't give a damn what term the man preferred. He hesitated for briefest of moments and then said they were murdered. Ella swallowed hard. Murdered? For the few seconds she was left mute. How? The man held up a hand. I can't see anymore. I am afraid. Not yet. But you should know that your parents were both tremendously brave people, Ella. They did their best to protect you, to allow you to enjoy a safe and happy childhood. Safe and happy? Thought Ella bitterly. Those were hardly the words she would have chosen to describe life up at the cabin with the Mimi. I want to know how they were killed and why. And you will, said the man, when you are ready. It was always your parents' wish that one day you would join us, carry on their legacy. The man continued talking about the group and the missions and the training, but Ella had turned out. She didn't care about whatever cult it was he was trying to persuade her to join. All she cared about was that this man knew things about her mother and father. Real things, specific things. For the first time in Ella's life, someone was offering her answers. Actual, factual answers. Not the stream of lies or half truth or platitude she had been fed by her grandmother, well intentioned or not. What else do you know about my parents? She interrupted him, claimed her place opposite at the table. You said you never met them. No, but other people in your group did. There are people still in the group who would have known them. Yes, the man answered cautiously. Who? Can I talk to them? I can't give you names at this stage, I'm afraid. What do you mean at this stage? Said Ella, growing more strident. And why can't you? They were my parents, and I have right to know. As I explained, once you start training for your first mission, you would be briefed more fully. The man said calmly. Ella rubbed her temples. This entire conversation had been surreal from the beginning, but all this talk of training and the missions was going too far. She wasn't about to join this weirdo's cult, still less volunteer for any sort of special ops. Whatever number these people had pulled on her parents back in the day wasn't going to work on her. She wasn't Lara Croft. She was an unemployed statistician with questionable social skill and some sort of undiagnosed mental disorder that made her feel as if hundreds of little men with pickaxes were permanently mining the inside of her cranium day in, day out. Most of the time, it was the mission for Ella just to get through the day. Wearily, she pressed her splayed fingers to the side of her skull. Your training will help you with the headaches you've been experiencing, the man said nonchalantly, as well as with the other side effects of your gifts. He chose the word carefully, turning it over in his mind like a squirrel trying to select a particular nut. The nausea, hearing voices, all of that. Ella's stomach lurched. How on earth did this complete stranger know about the voices in her head? She never told anyone about them, not even to her useless doctors. What do you mean by my gifts? Her voice came out scratchy and restrained. How do you know about these things about me? Here, man reached into his inside jacket and pulled out silver USB memory stick that looked like an old fashioned cigarette lighter. Look at this after I have gone. I will give you more clarity on details. You are unique, but the important thing to understand is that there's nothing wrong with you, Ella. Your brain was simply designed differently to other people's. Brains aren't designed, murmured Ella, gazing at the stick in her palm, talking as much to herself as to him. Yours was, said the man, in vitro. Your parents were pioneers in gene editing. As individual scientists, they were each brilliant, but as a team, they pushed boundaries that none of their contemporaries dared even approach. Wait, Ella held up her hands. My parents were both doctors, medical doctors. That is not accurate, said the man. Yes, it is accurate, insisted Ella angrily. My grandmother told me. Is this the same grandmother who told you that they died in the car crash? The man gave her the pitying look. Surely you have realized by now, Ella, that your grandmother lied to you repeatedly about many things. Ella bit her lips. She wanted him to be wrong, wanted to able to leap to Mimi's defense, but she couldn't. What I'm telling you now is truth, said the man. Whether you chose to believe it or not, your parents were not doctors, they were research scientists. Your mother was a neurologist and your father a geneticist. And they were two of the most brilliant minds in their generation. You were their greatest achievement. Ella waited for him to go on. The voices and messages you've been hearing aren't auditory hallucination. They are all real, he explained. They're electronic signals, emails, text, data, and voice transmission. You were genetically modified before birth to be able to receive and theoretically at least to unscramble them. We believe you have visual capabilities too, but we won't know the full extent of your gifts until we get you into a lab. It's really quite exciting, man added cheerfully. Exciting to be told that your own parents had conceived you as some sort of experiment. The word genetically modified made Ella think of all those perfectly round red tomatoes that look pretty on the supermarket shelf but tasted like tennis ball when you bite into them. Fake, ruined. You are saying my parent caused the problems with my brain? She reiterated slowly. On purpose? Not problems, abilities, said the man. You're looking at this all wrong, Ella. Just imagine the possibilities. You are gifted. You can access the unknown. You're like a human receiver. Well, if I am, I'm a broken one. Ella snapped. I can't unscramble anything. All I'm hearing is white noise until my head feels like it is going to explode. I'm sick all the time. That's the only gift they gave me, the only ability. There was no mistaking the bitterness in her voice, the anger. I understand it's a shock, said the man, with an attempt to empathy that clearly did not come natural to him. But those things will all improve with training once you have learned how to master your abilities. We hope they will prove to be invaluable asset to the group and to the greater good, just as your parents intended. He stood up, pushing back his chair, straightening his silk tie with a perfectly manicured hand. I know it's a lot to take in. Download the information on the memory stick. Try to focus when you do, because once viewed, it will automatically permanently delete. I will be in touch in the coming days about the next steps. Ella stood up. She couldn't just let him leave. She no longer thought he was deranged, but at the same time, none of this made the remotest bit of sense. How dare this man, this stranger, walk into her life, drop bomb after bomb after bomb, refuse to answer her questions, then saunter off, leaving Ella to pick up the pieces. Reaching out, she put a restraining hand on his arm. Wait, hold on, please. I will be in touch, he said, shrugging off her hand and heading for the door. You know what? Don't bother. Ella yelled after him defiantly as he started down the stairs. Because I'm not joining any stupid group, not for you or my parents or anything else. So don't come back here. The man kept walking. I have a life of my own, Ella shouted. He stopped and turned to look up at her, his expression curious rather than angry. Do you? No jobs, no families, no friends, no real purpose. He counted off Ella defiances on his finger, not spitefully, but in a matter of fact way, like a scientist letting the data speak for itself. That's not what I would call a life, concluded. But perhaps we have different standards. Ella spluttered furiously, trying to think of suitable comeback, but by the time it came to her, the man had gone. She stood alone at the top of the stairs, silver USB stick clutched in her hand, feeling as if tornado had just swept into her life, upended every single thing in it. If the man had still been in range, she would have hurled the stick at his head and hoped she knocked him out cold. Smug bastard. Well, if he thought he was going to determine her future, he had another thing coming. Ella was in Frankenstein's monster, whatever her parent might have intended. The man could take his stupid group and his training and his mission and stick them where the sun didn't shine. I will show you, Mr. Perhaps we have different standards, Mr. It dawned on Ella in that moment that this man who claimed to know so much about her and her parents, this stranger who unlocked the mystery of her secret voices, solved the riddles of her past, hadn't told Ella a single thing about himself. She didn't know how he would come to join the group or what he did for them. She didn't know how old he was, where he lived. She didn't even know his name. We literally have 45 seconds left. Uh, Next chapter, we will be reading chapter 5. Thank you for joining with me for today's midnight reading with me, Jamie, and we are reading Sidney Sheldon, The Phoenix by Tilly Bagshaw. I hope today I did well. Till tomorrow, goodbye, good night. Wait for the next chapter. Bye. Signing out.